Hi, everyone. Welcome to our inaugural CAN Sustainability live stream workshop. Today with us is Julie from Skedaddle Ridge Homestead, and she is going to show us how to give us instructions on water bath canning asparagus. So I'll hand it over to Julie.
So thank you, Julie.
Yes, thank you very much.
I'm going to be referencing. The Bernadette Complete Book of Home Preserving, and basically there's a guide that has the recipe that I'm going to be using. Step instructions. Firstly, we're just chopping and prepping everything. We're just kind of finishing up, pulling up some of the asparagus, and while we're finishing that, we also have the water heated and kind of ready to go. And what we'll do is we'll just go through and just actually process the asparagus. And while we're waiting for some things to brew, and then I'm going to come back and talk about some of the science behind why we crush a can, how it's done, so that the food is actually preserved and there's like not microorganisms, fungal activity, and things that would spoil the food. So what we have going on is the water bath water is hot. I have a little pot on the stove that has water in it that's simmering, it's not boiling, that I can add the lids to. And we will mix up a brine, because we're pickling the asparagus. We'll mix up the brine here and heat that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of mix that up as per our recipe. And then we'll get into some of the more formal discussion of like why we're doing what we're doing. So our pickled asparagus calls for 7 pounds of asparagus, ice water. So we have our asparagus waiting in some ice water. 4 tablespoons of finely chopped seeded bell pepper. So this is going to make up our brine water solution. And we have the green pepper, it's also 4. And we're going to add the hot chili pepper. And that is 2 tablespoons. And 3 tablespoons of the chopped garlic. The old lady that did the cooking show.
Julia Child.
Julia Child.
Yes.
I'm referencing
Yes. See if you do the voice impersonation.
I don't.
Ready? I think so. No, for the garlic.
And then we're going to add 5 cups of vinegar. And I'll explain something a little bit more depth later. But when you water bath, you actually want to water bath high acid foods. And asparagus happens to be a low acid food, but by adding the vinegar, tell I'm a novice live. So by adding the vinegar, we are raising the acidity level of the asparagus, which is tested to be a safe acidity level. So it raises it within the realms of water bath canning for low acid foods without vinegar, then you need a pressure canning method, which is different than, is that 4?
3. This one's
And so what are some like high acid foods that you would like?
I have a chart.
You have
I'm
a
gonna-
chart?
I'm gonna talk about it
Yay!
more in depth, like
Okay.
while we're waiting for that to heat up, because it's gotta come to like almost a boil.
Yeah.
We're gonna go through the science behind it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And if you need us to be like your sous chef or anything, tell us
Yeah.
what you need us to do.
Yes. Okay, Amy, do you want to add 1 2/3 cup of water? This is the 1/3 cup.
So in
and-
terms of the vinegar, if you're using different types of vinegar,
Mhm.
does
It
that
has to
change?
It does have to be, now, this says it's 7% acidic acid, and it does matter, you don't
Like an
want-
apple cider vinegar would
If
be a
you're-
different ratio?
Yeah, or if you're brewing your own vinegar, you wanna test what percentage of acidity it is, because that would, it's different. My book actually does not talk about that. So I can't say I have a reliable source to refer to at this moment, but that's something to keep in mind, is to check your acidity level. 7% is it. This is a trusted brand that I've used before. And then we need 1 2/3 cup granulated sugar. And we're going to use pickling salts. Don't use iodized salt, which is your typical table salt, for any canning.
How come?
I don't know. It's a good question. I know that the iodization does something.
Does something that isn't.
Does something, and I feel like what it is it affects the color of your preserves, but I can't for sure say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I've used sea salt and I've used Malayan salt in pickles. before.
Yeah, like a raw, you just don't want to use
Iodized
iodized
salt,
salts.
okay.
Iodized salt's like a no-no.
Yeah.
But yeah, any kind of coarse, untreated salt is good to go.
Okay. Cool.
So 4 teaspoons, that's half, so we need to use. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. 2 tablespoons of dill seed and the same amount of mustard seed.
Do you want a cloth to clean these up?
Not gonna scoop in, I'll just put over. 1, 2. So that's everything that makes up our brine. So basically we have our asparagus we're gonna pack into our jars, and then this brine that we're gonna pour over. So Amy, if you would like to put that on the stove
Okay.
and give it a good stir with the whisk. Over there. And maybe while I'm talking, Amy, if you could just check on that every now and again, to just give it a little stir.
The oven, like make sure there's enough wood in it.
Our brine, yeah.
Okay. Sure.
I think the wood is good.
What's good, right?
Yeah, and we're actually doing this canning on a cook stove, so this is really like pioneer-esque here. I have the eye out of the wood stove so that the canner can sit directly over the flame. It's important to like keep a hot heat. Smaller pieces of wood create more heat. So I'm just going to kind of go through the recipe to where we're at, and just kind of like read it verbatim so that you can see like what the process we've done. What is trim the rough ends off the asparagus, and cut spears into a uniform length about 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters shorter than the inside height of the jars we're using. In a large shallow dish, cover the asparagus with ice water and refrigerate 1 hour. Meanwhile, we're preparing our canner, our jars, and our lids. I've already washed all the jars and they are in the oven with the rim, the top part facing up. And that's how I sterilize and keep them warm. So they have to stay warm until we're ready to actually pack everything in. This book says that there's no need to actually sterilize bottles, which is contrary to like a traditional way that I was taught. But for pressure canning and water bath canning, there's no need to sterilize. But having them in the oven just happens to do both of those things.
So they don't, yeah, it's glass, they wouldn't break, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Unless I took it out and plunged it directly into cold water, then it'll break.
Okay,
So in a small bowl, combine the red, green pepper, hot pepper, and garlic, and mix well, set aside. In a large stainless steel saucepan, combine all of those ingredients and reduce heat and gently boil for 5 minutes. Add the asparagus and return to a boil and boil for 2 minutes or until the asparagus is heated through. Okay, so you let me know when that's boiling, then we'll add the asparagus. And that's where we are for now. I want to go and just talk about what we're doing here is we're actually heat processing the asparagus and the contents of the bottles. And heat processing inactivates naturally occurring enzymes that lead to deterioration in the food. And without heat activation, you still could potentially have some enzymes left in there that can brew and create some problems. The heat processing also creates an airtight seal that prevents recontamination of food during storage. So without an airtight seal, there's the potential of foreign bacteria getting in. And we know that a bottle is sealed when you go and push down and you don't hear a pop. So if it's sealed, it'll be already sucked down with a vacuum, and so you can't actually make it pop by pushing it. So this is kind of built-in test. And then now we're going to talk about the acidity. The acidity determines the heat processing method. So there's a chart here. I'm going to pass the book around. I don't know if we can have a look at it if we can zoom in with so people can see.
Totally.
But there's a
Yeah, we can totally do. Can I ask you something about the popping thing?
Yeah.
This is my own personal like curiosity.
Sure.
So when you have your cans on the cloth on your table and you're hearing them pop, 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 and if you touch one and that instigates the pop, have you like ruined it?
You have interfered with the process.
Okay.
I wouldn't say necessarily that you ruined it.
Yeah.
Because there's another step after everything's cooled down that you can check to see if it actually is sealed.
Okay.
After you take off the rim screw band, by picking the jar up by the lid.
Oh.
You pick up the jar by the lid and it stays on the jar and the jar goes with it, then you know it's a seal.
Okay.
Yeah. But here talks about the relative position of various foods on the pH, acidity, alkalinity scale. And so you have a scale between 1 and 14, so 1 being strong acid and then 14 being a strong alkali. Things like lemons, pickles, gooseberries, apricots, plums, apples, sour cherries, peaches, etc. Most of your fruits are between a 2 and a 4. And for those foods, they can grow what is considered a mold and yeasts. Okay. Once you get into the lower acid foods, which are like orca, carrots, beets, green beans, asparagus, and lima beans, you can start to brew bacterias. And that's at about 5 acidity level, and then at 6.7, peas and corn, which they have labeled here as neutral, and I'm not sure what that necessarily means. I think that they can also brew bacteria, but it shows for anything ranging between 2 and 4 that you have to process at 100 degrees Celsius in boiling water canner, and anything between a 4 and a 7 that has to go to 106 or 116 Celsius in a pressure canner. Yeah, I don't know if you could kind of like zoom into it a little bit.
I wasn't sure.
Just a charge.
Because I was like,
I think so.
yes. Water. So what are the high acid foods? I think I missed. Did you list them?
Most fruits.
Most fruits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think almost every fruit.
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah. And they were like to 4 on the scale for acidity?
Between 2 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, when you're sourcing reputable, reliable recipes, they should indicate whether or not it needs to be pressure canned or water bath canned. So if it doesn't say, maybe like search for a different recipe that does indicate that, just kind of as your fail safe.
You can't water bath.
That's right.
Unless you pickle it.
Unless you pickle it.
Unless you bring up the acidity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you can water bath.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the new best practices. Even just like 10 to 20 years ago, there was definitely a different viewpoint, and there's still people that hold the viewpoint that will tell you that, say, string beans without vinegar, that you can just water bath it for 90 minutes and it's good to go. But they've actually studied the internal temperatures and the microorganisms and those enzymes, and it actually doesn't kill everything when you do that. I've heard people that do that say, well, when you open it up, if you have any question, you just make sure you boil it for 10 minutes and you've killed everything. But I prefer to use the pressure canner for that, and make sure to water bath even my salsa. And yeah. So for this workshop, we're using them, modern practices. There's some talk in here about making sure that you use quality foods. And I've heard that kind of language a lot, that, use fresh foods and make sure that it's good quality, no pests. And I didn't quite understand why. I just thought it was like common sense. But then when reading through here, it does say do not use heavily diseased, moldy, insect damaged, or overripe produce as it has a higher microorganism count.
Okay.
And so if you say have tomatoes with blight, I've heard people say, oh, they're fine, you can pressure can them. But actually they have a higher microorganism count, and the recipe in here that says, for example, to process for 15 minutes now isn't reliable because it's not based on this higher microorganism count. So
Okay.
nice to know.
Good to know.
Yeah. And so just like step by step, the method of boiling boiling water, heat processing, is how they call it in here. So your water bath canning is, first you clean your jars and the closures, wash them well with hot soapy water, and then you heat your jars. I'm doing it in the oven. I find that's just works best for me. Some people actually put their jars inside of the boiling water bath canner and just take them out when it's time to fill. I've heard of people taking the rack out of the canner and having the jars upside down so the steam keeps them warm. And just so you know, because I haven't shown the inside of the water bath canner, but this is a rack that goes in the bottom. The rack that's in that canner actually has lifters that you lift up and then you can set it on the side so that it raises those bottles out. And it's important to have something that keeps your bottles away from touching the bottom of the pot, because if it's directly on the bottom of the pot, it's getting like really intense heat and can crack. And then overboil, and you have like siphoning out of liquids because the internal temperature has gotten too hot. So you can actually use any pot as long as you have something to keep them from touching directly on the bottom. And you can use anything really, an upside down tin plate, or I've heard of people using just cloth, like a couple dish towels in there, just something to give it a little bit of an insulation between the pot and the jars.
So Julie, just for anyone who maybe joined us late, can I give another reintroduction
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah.
So thank you. So for anyone who's just joining us, this is Julie with Skedaddle Ridge Homestead, and you're here with us at the Noseville Art and Nature Center. Maybe Michelle, could we come over to let's have a look. So you're joining us today in our off-grid facilities, and we are showing you how to water bath can asparagus today. Come see. Come with me. Come see. Let's have a look. What we're doing. So about a half an hour in, Julie has water boiling. Julie and Amy have the brine, right, Julie?
Yeah.
What all have we put in there? Everything, peppers, vinegar, sugar, garlic.
Kosher salt, dill, and mustard.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. And Julie is going to show us everything we need to know to safely and securely can some asparagus. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So the next step is to prepare your closures. And so we have these are the 3 bands from a mason jar. And it doesn't have to be the mason jar brand, but that's a canning jar. And our lids. And we need to heat these lids up. So as to, this gasket is going to be like hot when we actually attach it to our hot jar, and that'll help the seal better. So I have hot water. It's kind of steaming. It's been there for a while. And I'm going to add these to that hot water, but I don't want that to boil. If you actually actively boil these lids, it can compromise that gasket, and then you don't have a proper seal. So I don't want to just chuck them in all like this, but I just kind of try to stack them alternately.
They will suction together.
They will kind of stick together.
Yeah. Because the rubber around the ring itself kind of heats up and then goes. Yeah.
And sometimes you get 2 stuck together, and then the one on the inside doesn't get
Okay.
like
Yes.
it's dry almost, right?
Okay, and then
Like,
it's not usable.
Yeah. And then we've already prepared a recipe. We have our brine all starting to get warmed up, and our asparagus cut, and then we're going to fill our jars. So as soon as that's ready, we'll fill our jars. You'll be right here. We'll do that all together. And when we're packing our asparagus in, and then we're going to add our brine to it, we want to leave what's called head space. And that's the space between where the top of your brine is to the very top of the jar. And so our recipe calls for 1/2 inch of headspace. And so we need to ensure that our asparagus sits below the water level. And if you end up with more liquid in, what it can happen is it can end up siphoning out of the jar and affecting the seal. And so, what do we have for a non-metallic utensil?
I've lots of wood over here.
Wood. And so, and we'll do this too, but say, once we get our liquid in the jar, we want to make sure there's no air bubbles, because air bubbles actually will affect that head space. So if there's a lot of air bubbles, once those air bubbles come out, our liquid goes below our allotted head space. So what we do is with a non-metallic utensil, is just kind of go around and move it around to get those air bubbles out. And then we look, oh, we need to add like an extra little teaspoon of brine to bring it, the head space back up to our appropriate level.
And I think it's just the metal utensil reacts with the high acid, right? And can leave a metallic flavor in the
Okay.
also metal color.
I didn't know that. I also thought that you were not supposed to use a metal utensil with sour. I had that in my head.
Yeah,
Is
you're
that
not
true?
supposed to,
Okay. Yeah.
because I think it's same thing, it like
Same idea.
oxidizes and it messes with the yeast.
Okay.
What we're also going to do, and this book doesn't really mention this, but after pouring your brine in, you might have a little piece of pepper or a spice that is sitting directly on the rim of the jar. And the book says to just wipe it with clean or hot soapy water. But somewhere along the way, I did read that using vinegar with your towel. So, I got my towel and I just wiped that rim all the way around with the cloth. And that makes sure that there's nothing there and it's all clean and free of debris. Little pieces of spice, or if you're counting something like a pizza sauce, and make sure to get all the sauce off of the edge. It can get a little bit dirty in some situations.
We have a question. Isn't there someone out there who makes awesome wooden spoons?
Just yeah, we can certainly give a plug to that. We can get information.
Well, we could.
Yeah,
like,
should
answer
For
that.
use in the workshop.
Yeah,
The
product
teamer
placement.
with Logan Woods.
That's with
Little
Billy.
earrings too.
And the best ones.
And so then once we have the rim clean, it's important to, when you have your lid on, take the lid out. I use a little fork to pull it out, place it on there, and then put your screw band on. And I always kind of like do that until it's like it catches and it stops and there's like no resistance. And then what you'll hear referred to is what's called fingertip tight, and it's not a wrenching. It's literally you turn just with your fingertips, and that's as tight as it needs to be. And
The idea is that you want air to still be able to escape,
yeah,
and if it's too tight, you can
yeah,
trap
there
it.
will be venting. That's how you create a vacuum. Is that air needs to be able to come out of the jar during processing. It heats up inside, air escapes out through, but then as it's cooling, it can't come back in. It creates that locking in the vacuum.
So literally did not realize that was the reason for the fingertip. I've always known that that's what you should do. Did not understand what was happening.
That's what the pop is, it's the air
Yeah.
leaving and creating that vacuum.
Right.
Seal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Then we would have all of our jars ready to go in the counter. We would load the counter full of our jars, lower it down into the water, and then we have to maybe adjust our water level. You need to have at least 1 inch of water above the top of your jars, so completely submerged. Once the water is boiling hard, continuously begin counting the processing time specified in the recipe. The rapid boil must continue for the duration of the processing time. So you don't start the processing time when you sink them down. You have to wait till it gets back up to a rolling boil. And then once your processing time is done, you remove the lid off of the canner and remove from heat or turn off your heat. In this case, we'll remove it from the stove completely. And then you let the canner cool for 5 minutes before lifting the jars out. And that is the reason. It's so that it can cause this boiling over and excessive boiling inside of the jars, causing it to siphon out even more after you've removed the jars from the canner. And then you're going to leave them undisturbed. Once you raise them, you take them out of the canner. You can use a tool like this to pick up each jar carefully from the canner and set them down on a mat, a couple tea towels, like maybe 2 layers of tea towels. Otherwise, you can end up with like almost a residue on your table. And leave them undisturbed for 24 hours. Completely cool. I remember when I was a little girl, my mom did a lot of water bath canning, and one thing that we would always do is we'd notice that after the canning that the rim was a little bit loose, and for whatever reason we would just tighten it more, and that's bad. That can break the seal, actually. And what the practice is now is actually to just gently remove that lid. There's been a few instances where I'm not able to remove the lid gently. And in that case, I just leave it be and I use that one up first. I just put it in the fridge and I'll use that one up first. But we want to actually remove that rim because during the process of creating that vacuum and our venting, some of our fluid that's in the jar, our brine, can siphon out and end up on the outside of our jar. And if it's hidden underneath of the rim, we don't see that there's like food particles under there, and it can create mold and bacteria. And you go and check on it like 6 months later or a year later, and you're like, ooh, what's growing on the outside of my jar? And it's really hard to make sure that you actually got that all cleaned off once there's so much mold growing. And the mold can actually penetrate the seal and then contaminate the contents inside. So we want to, again, with the vinegar, clean the outside of the whole jar, and then we'll mark the date and the contents and of what's in it, and then store it in a cool, dry place. And it says that you can actually put this rim back on, but just very loosely, just like so it's barely on, so it can still kind of move. I don't do that. I leave it off. And the reason why I leave it off is because there's been times that I've gone into my pantry and I realize, oh, a lid is off. One of my lids are off. And so I can very quickly identify that a lid is off, rather than removing all the bands to check to see if all my lids are still on. I can just like pull the side of it. Okay, it's still on tight. And because if one does spoil, you just want to remove it from your pantry as quickly as possible.
So you leave the rims off all the time?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have a
Can I
string.
add another reason?
Sure.
That when the band is on, it can actually pop and reseal itself without you knowing, right? Where if the band is off, if it pops, it won't reseal.
Right.
So with the band, it can go through that process and you would never know, just with different humidities and temperature and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the same reason it's advised to never stack your cans after they've been, you have preserves in them, not to stack them, is because then it can allow it to burp and the seal can come out and then
You can
reseal
suck back in.
from the weight of the bottle that's on top of it. So this is another way to stay safe.
You mentioned pizza sauce and salsa. Would they both be considered acidic?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
There's a question. They're not sure if it was, if you leave the rim on until the bottles are cool, is that okay? Or do you need to remove them while it is still hot? I think you might have mentioned, but I missed it.
So you, after you take your bottles out of the canner and place them on the table, you want to leave them completely undisturbed for 24 hours. And it's only after 24 hours that you want to remove the rims. Okay.
After this. I can smell this.
So our brine is now boiling. And so I'm going to kind of pause on explaining the process and we'll totally come back to it. And what we're going to do is I'll just ask my participants, we'll all just work away. Actually, our recipe says we need to add this asparagus to that first.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're not using this asparagus?
Yeah, I think we'll see what fits in there. I think that. Add asparagus and return to a boil.
Mm-hmm.
Boil for 2 minutes or until asparagus is heated through. Just take that.
We did.
Something to recommend.
Oh, that's good?
Smells really good. Yeah, it really.
Pickling everything.
Right?
These asparagus came from Dittrich Nurseries. We have a neighbor that grows amazing. Oh, we don't have enough room for it all.
He's got his white asparagus going on.
Yes, with some white asparagus. I've seen that's kind of like trending. I think that's all that we're going to be able to fit in there right now.
And we'll drop a link to Dittrich Nurseries as well as Woken Woods in our comments on this YouTube channel. So if you're looking for that, you'll find it.
Keep an eye on.
Okay.
Okay. What's the easiest way to set up for the jars? Is
Um,
everyone gonna have it in front of them, like a few
Yeah.
jars in front of them, or
Yeah.
do it all in the?
what we'll do is like if the four participants can kind of like sit right here, keep the jars in the
In the
center. And there. So I have the vinegar. And then we'll need a couple of cloves. We can use the clean cloths.
Do you need to leave the jars undisturbed for 24 hours upside down or not necessarily?
Absolutely do not put them upside down. They need to be lids up. Yep, there is one method. There is a method that discusses putting the lid upside down, and that's different than this method.
Can you show us the book that you're using and like, do you recommend it? Obviously, you've got lots of tips.
It's my canning Bible. It has all the recipes for water bath canning and pressure canning. It's a few years old. I'm sure there's probably a revised edition.
Okay.
And I'm sure that there's other, this is not an endorsement for Bernadette brand at all, because I'm not getting paid by them, so. This is sponsored by the Can Center. Okay, so I was just getting ready to put a timer on. Once it starts sizzling.
Right.
It says for 2 minutes. we have these too for lifting. Oh.
So this is almost about to boil. Start the timer on the asparagus. Not quite.
Right. That was what you had mentioned, Julie, that we have to make sure and not start timing the process.
Yep. The recipe calls for 6 pints, which this is a pint jar.
Is that the same as like the 500 ml? Is it
Yes.
500 ml?
Yes. And I believe I put 8 in, just in case one cracks and breaks, or just in case we have a little extra. I believe that canner will hold 7 or 9. No, I think it'll hold 9. So there's 8, just in case we have enough to fit it in. We can do a whole canner load. But you can always, with your recipes, you can double it, you can triple it, quadruple it. You just got to do a little bit of
You
math.
doubled yours, right?
No, this one is just
Okay.
for the 6 pints. Can resume.
What's happening with these ones?
They're just kind of extras.
Okay.
Someone can eat them or bottle them afterwards. Okay, so then we go, the book goes into some other things about, one section is about using the home canned foods. And it might sound like common sense, but actually don't use any product that has become unsealed or shows signs of spoilage. And the signs of spoilage are include any mold, gassiness. So if you go to open the jar and that seal appears to be pushed out, that's an indicator of gas. Or when you break the seal, if you hear a psh, like it's releasing gas, that's an indication that something has been growing in there. Cloudiness, spurting liquid. So when you open it, if liquid comes out, yeast growth, any signs of fermentation, slime, or disagreeable odors. And I just want to make a note about the odors is that you don't always smell bacteria or botulism. You cannot smell and you cannot taste it. So it's good to know what the other signs are. And if you're looking for all those things, then you can be sure that that's safe.
So what do you typically can at home on your homestead, Julie? Like what do you water bath? Like
I do beet pickles, mustard pickles, which are like cucumbers, like a Lady Ashburnham style, pickled carrots, pickled green beans or yellow beans. I do salsa and pizza sauce and juice. Like fruit juices.
oh cool.
Like rhubarb juice or choke cherry juice or any kind of juices. What else do I water bath?
Jams.
Sorry, yes, jellies.
And do you water bath your jams too? Like
Yes.
do you, because I found with my last batch that it became like super thick, like by water bathing, actually more than usual. Yeah, but maybe it was just the nature of the berries. I didn't have enough water in them.
Did you protect it?
Yeah, we did, but I've made this recipe for years, but this is the first time I'd ever water bathed it.
What do you know?
I actually used the cold method. I
You
just
did
like
hot sealing.
hot, yeah.
Hot bath.
And this time we water bathed it, and it was like, it's wonderful.
Okay, it's boiling.
It's boiling. Okay, so we'll leave that there.
So I'll leave the lid on just so that
We don't have to cool the asparagus, we're just gonna pop them straight in.
Yeah, we'll have to have something to put them back into.
I just put soapy water. This one's just got clear water.
Yeah, so we'll just ladle them back over.
How do you do your corn? Was that pressure can?
That's pressure can. Yeah, they are like very alkaline. One of the most alkaline and the highest risk of botulism.
Okay.
Is the corn.
So you pressure can.
It's good.
Yeah, it's so good.
I have enough corn to last Griffin and I probably for 5 years. My dad grows like amazing organic corn and we just I went to the pressure canning workshop last year and had Steve come and like learn it all and how to work away and help me with the whole process. And we were just like, yeah, let's do years of corn.
We have a Tom.
Yeah,
They
right over
like
here.
corn syrup, like homemade corn syrup or something a little bit different.
Did the timer go?
Not
The
that,
timer
but
didn't go, but
they've-
they're done.
they're done.
Okay. Fatima knows her
worried that
stuff.
I'm worried they're gonna go mushy, right?
Oh, yeah. Because it did take a while for them to boil.
Like without following a recipe, I would be prone to cold pack the asparagus and then put the hot brine on. To try not to keep them crisp, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it smells so good. I wish there was a smell button.
No. We want to put the rest of this in?
We can talk about it.
Oh, is this not it? This is the
Well,
end?
if we do more, it means we need to. Right.
Yeah.
So I think we'll pack what's there and use up that brine. And we'll put it in a canner and then, maybe just have to do another run after to process the rest.
So tell me, do you want me to take out the jars now and bring the brine over?
Yeah, we'll bring out the jars first.
Yeah.
And get the asparagus packed in.
We're gonna need a funnel or.
I don't think they're
No. Ladle? Yeah, those are.
Yeah, I guess this is.
You got that?
Okay. And we'll bring the brine over?
I do too.
That's your best order here.
We're gonna do, we need to do
This again.
again at my house. Like we did last year. Ooh, it's sizzling.
Jars are hot, right?
So now do we want to put the face up so it looks pretty?
Yeah. So you get to decorate them.
Yeah, this is the first time hot packing for a water bath. Following our recipe. If you do asparagus, would you normally put it in cold? Or would you have always done it like this? This is the first time I've done asparagus. I was hoping to do fiddleheads actually,
Okay.
but I think the time's passed for.
But I've done something that's both cold pack and hot pack.
Okay.
Recipes usually call for it to be hot pack.
Yeah.
But the one time I did it cold pack, They were so good.
Just like more crisp.
Well, they stayed crisp.
Yeah.
And they didn't go soft.
Mushy.
Yeah. And so then I've always done my beans cold pack too. Like I'll pack my beans and then I pour the boiling brine on, right?
Yeah.
And then put it in the water.
That fiddlehead soup that you make, and is that a water bath?
No, that's a pressure can.
Oh, okay.
But there is no studied or verified recipes for fiddleheads because they're so exclusive to New Brunswick,
Right.
or this area. But all the research that I've done online guides me to process them the same as asparagus.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get a little spoon to like collect all that. Peppers. I feel like we could consolidate
Some of the
jars.
jars, yeah.
We'll try to, from this jar, take out. I feel like we need to be like fuller.
Yeah, I agree.
Have a knife.
And you would normally use your utensils like this to do it, or like if it wasn't hot anymore, could you use your hands to place on it, or?
Yeah, if you're raw packing, you can use your hands. So just make sure your hands are good and clean.
That's why I like to cold pack because I can
Yeah,
change
it
it
seems
in,
like
right?
it's more challenging to use these.
Okay, so
And you get a lot of beans in it, right?
Is that
It's
enough,
all
do you think?
straight.
yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
and you
position
pack them
them
as
so that they're
low.
below our recommended headspace. Just kind of push them down. It's okay if a piece or two is above the water, but it will discolor if it's not covered completely.
And in terms of space, like if say you got those all straight, how packed would you pack it?
As tight as like you get.
Okay.
And then you would use less brine too, right?
Right, and does that affect your air bubbles? Like you still, you know what I mean?
You have to
Like,
do a better job and
at moving things around to get the air bubbles out.
Mhm.
So like a little wiggle room is probably like, you know, the end of the spoon.
yeah, but if you pack it cold, when you pour the hot brine on, it's gonna shrink, right? Because
So then it gives a little
it
bit.
gives a little bit more room. So I usually pack it as tight as I can dry.
So we have to team up with brine.
Do you want me to start pouring?
Where would you like to have one of the cooks and do the wiping along the
It's already got vinegar in there.
It already
And
does.
then we can come behind whisper.
Top
Lid
top.
on.
Skill. So how do I do this?
I
Okay, you should get in on this because I didn't know what I was doing.
There are magnetic tools that you can purchase in the canning section that make this quite a lot easier. So which one was wiped? Were the two closest to
Yeah, sorry, I'm on
Right.
the order here.
Okay. And now this one here should, I guess we're gonna do it anyway. Yeah. Okay, so she said to do this.
When are you gonna stir it?
Oh, right. When am I gonna stir it?
Yeah,
Are we gonna stir it before the lid's on?
Yes.
Probably before I wipe it back.
Yes. We forgot the stirring bowl.
Yeah. We're just gonna do this. Just to make sure that there's no air bubbles. Push those down a little bit. And I can see, yeah, we'll maybe put a little bit more brine in. We can add.
I just strained out the spice left over and so that we can
Yeah,
give no
let's
room
get
for
a
brine.
spoon and add that, the spices.
Thank you.
This is gonna add to our flavor. We don't wanna lose it.
Would they be flavorful like right now, or would it take like a week?
Oh, I would leave it a month before you kind of crack it. It's almost like when you're fermenting alcohol, you kind of like want that rest period for it to really like marinate.
Okay.
Now, if any, now you're good.
So now we can wipe our rims.
Then did you stir? You should
Yeah, I already did.
that.
And I'm gonna wipe these and then
Now, if for whatever reason some of the jars or a jar doesn't seal in the process, I would throw that one in the fridge for 2 weeks and then say use that, right?
Yeah.
But 2 weeks at least to get a little bit of pickle in it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if you didn't care about the flavor, you could eat it right away.
Oh, you could, yeah. So like refrigerator pickles, if you make refrigerator pickles, then you can keep them in 2 weeks. So they would definitely stay good because of the vinegar. Oh, there's so many different.
When you store them, it has to be in a cold space.
Cold and dark. It's heat, humidity, and sunlight is what's going to negatively affect. All right, so now they're all closed up, and we're just gonna add them to our water bath canner. A rolling boil. I need to pick out the
How many tongs are here?
yeah, something not those.
You have lots of phones.
So with
Or use tongs.
Well, we have two.
oh, I got
Not
that.
all together. Good job.
So now we're gonna use our lifters. And we're gonna
In each section like this.
yeah.
And you go straight upright, or is that okay like that?
Yeah, I think so. The next one I do like
Opposite
opposite side so that it doesn't tip.
Okay. Oh, I'm so excited to can things.
In one season, you will have the expertise of 20 years with all the people.
With all this knowledge around me.
Lower this down. And all of our jars kind of just went upright.
And do they need to be under the water?
They do. So we're gonna need to add hot water.
Okay.
Use the big liquid measuring. Yeah. Yeah, we can use some of that.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Ryan. Now, nutritionally, like, does pickling food, like, are you still getting the nutrition from food when you pickle it, or is it, like, it's quite acidic, right? So,
Yeah,
is it,
it's packed full of nutrients. I mean, whenever you cook a food, you lose some nutrients.
right,
And so you can consider this cooking the food at least to a blanching state.
but the pickling doesn't do anything to the nutrition?
No, and I'm gonna say that with reservation.
Yeah.
We're using the word pickling in the modern terms of adding vinegar.
Right.
So in that sense, no. But historically or traditionally, when someone said pickling, they were referring to fermenting food.
Right.
So that word can kind of be misunderstood in the canning world, because
Okay.
if someone says I pickled this or that, they may be saying that they actually fermented it, which is a completely different process. It does not include water bathing at all.
Okay.
Lacto-fermented foods, you're increasing nutrition?
So just gonna put the cover back on, and we're gonna keep a close eye and check for it to boil. And while we're waiting for that, I'll explain a little bit about altitude. So in the book here, it talks about altitude, and it's something that's actually not widely discussed in canning communities. But the altitude of where you live matters, and it matters. It's important that the reference or recipe that you're using notes what the baseline altitude is, because as elevation or altitude above sea level increases, water boils at lower temperatures that are less effective for killing harmful spoilage microorganisms. And this book indicates that all the recipes in this book are stated for elevations of 0 to 1,000 feet. And there's also a chart here that explains that if you are above or below those elevations, how to adjust the timing of your processing. For pressure canning, the timing doesn't change, but the amount of weight you add to the top of the canner changes as per whatever altitude you're at. So it's important that when using a recipe that it does note what altitude that recipe is indicated for. And that's all that I really wanted and planned to discuss. We do have a handout. Are we timing now? We're waiting for it to return to the boil, and then we start the timer of that. And then, yeah, it has to be at a rolling boil, not just a little bit of a boil, but like a full boil, and then we start our timing.
And what is the time on
And
the
this
asparagus?
would be a good time if we, perfect, load a little bit of, the timing for the asparagus is 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
is there a way that this could be made available?
Yes, I will put it into a Google document and give you, and put a link.
Link it to the YouTube.
Yes, under in the comments.
In the comments section. Okay.
So once we post it there.
Yes.
So that is in the description maybe also?
Yep.
Either or, it'll be attached to wherever the video ends up in its permanent home.
So this is just a little 2-pager that kind of gives a basic of what we did today. It doesn't cover everything that we discussed, but it's nice to have. You guys can take a copy home with you. And while we're waiting for that, I don't think will we continue the live until this is like completely like finished?
No, I think it
Or
makes sense that we can sort
do a
of
little-
say goodbye and
Do a little. Anyone have questions?
Right.
If anybody wants to have
Q&A,
questions, I can answer any questions that you have at this point. You just
I think you should just, right now, so we're at this point, it's on the fire. It's gonna boil for how long?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, and then after that, you take it off, you wait for the water to cool, then take the jars. Can you just go over the steps,
Yep.
like the last few steps one
Yep.
more time?
So, this is gonna come to a boil, and then we're gonna start our processing time, which for this recipe is 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes, we're gonna remove it from the heat source and just let it set for 5 minutes. We can remove the lid, but just let it set in the water for 5 minutes. And then we raise that out, and with our little holders, we're gonna bring it right back over here onto our cloth, and we're gonna leave it undisturbed for 24 hours. After that point, we're gonna remove our screw bands, clean around the whole jar using some vinegar, and then label and date. And we're gonna store it in a cool, dry space that's out of the sunlight. Root cellars are amazing for that, but if you don't, you could just be in the back of a cupboard or in a closet somewhere that's not gonna have direct sunlight or dirt.
For at least how long?
With a pickle, because it's a pickle, you wanna have your spices and the dill all infused. I'd say like a minimum a month before you really crack it open and you're like, that's the flavor it was intended. You can eat it right away. You could just eat it directly after taking it out of the canner, but for the best flavor, you're gonna wanna let it rest for about a month, I'd say. Yeah. Is there any questions coming in on the live stream? Okay, well, thank you. I don't know, Nicole, if you have any closing remarks or?
No, thank you very much, Julie. I have learned a lot today. So I really appreciate this. Thank you. And I think what we'll do is when we end our live stream, we'll actually capture a video of you just doing the last few steps. And then we can just sort of have a time lapse, sort of like, these are the steps for anyone who this is brand new to. Sometimes it's nice to have that sort of visual cue.
Can you also like just give a quick, like a little spell about your homestead? Like where, like you have hip camp and you've been there for a few years. Like, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Skedaddle Ridge Homestead is the space that I steward on an essential community land share, and I started the page up because when I started to build my homestead, and my intentions were to live off grid, I was sharing it on my personal page, and a lot of the feedback was that, oh, you've inspired me, or I've learned so much from this post, or like I just I'm empowering people, and I was like, wow, like I'm empowering my friends, and I'm inspiring my friends, and it seems like people are really interested in like seeing what I'm doing. So I was like, I'll just open that up so that anybody can see. And out of that, I've found this need for mentoring. More and more people were coming to me for mentoring on a sustainable homestead lifestyle. I mean, I'm no expert, and I'm learning along the way, but I'm sharing that journey. And people are like, wow, you've inspired me. I got up today and I did this, or, oh, now I want to try that. Or, and so in that process, I had a motorhome that was originally intended to be a mobile studio because I am an artist, a designer, but that kind of got put to sleep. And now people come to my homestead and stay, and I provide accommodations, and we share skills and learn from each other. And so that's on the Work Away site. Some people just want to come and see this beautiful ridge and experience the sound of the creek when they wake up and don't want to really learn anything. They just want a little bit of an oasis. So they connect with me through Hip Camp, where they can just do a rental and there's no work there. And I guess it's just kind of manifested out of like, not really a goal I have for myself, but just what has been coming towards me. And I just feel like there's that need of a lot of people that are living like a really urban lifestyle. And especially with the economy shifting and things getting more expensive and, food prices, more and more people are searching a different way, more sustainable way to live. And I'm happy to share that information. Yeah. And it's no profits included. Sometimes I accept donations and I just do it for fun.
We have 2 comments, questions. So thank you very much, Julie. And is there any more workshops planned?
Yes, we have more workshops. Yes, we have more workshops coming your way. We have plans for a sustainable building practices workshop. And we also have plans for a garden planning for food security workshop. But we are also really happy to hear any of your thoughts, comments, questions about what you'd like to see in the workshops. We're hoping to deliver more of these. This is our first go. I think Julie set a pretty high bar in terms of the standard for what we're delivering. But this community is full of a lot of incredible knowledge and people who hopefully want to share some of those skills on live stream workshops. So send us a question or an idea if there's something you want to learn about. We'll see if we can find the expert.
And yes, there's a question, will this workshop be recorded? And so yes, it's recorded and the plan is they will be available on YouTube, right?
That's
For
correct.
for people for people who subscribe,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
And then
So the way we are slowly trying to find our way in this online influencing world of social media. So right now, yes, these will be recorded and available. So if you subscribe, you have access. And once we hit a certain gold star on our chart level of subscribers, it will be widely accessible to everyone on YouTube. Yeah. Okay.
So subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe.
And you can follow Skedaddle Ridge Homestead on Facebook as well as Instagram. Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay,
So I just started the timer.
Okay.
Well done.
that was awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.